It broke my heart in those moments when I realized that I was living inside of someone else's dream and someone else's reality, and that I for so long was foregoing what it was that I actually wanted because A, I didn't really know what I wanted, and B, I felt selfish. I felt like I wasn't allowed to want more from my life. Hello and welcome to Unmasked Founders. The why behind this podcast really comes from my own story, my own journey, and being the woman that I needed in the moments where I felt like I wanted to give up and then I couldn't keep going. I do what I do. I share my podcast, I share my work because I lived so long in a life that I thought I wanted. I lived so long as a version of me that just kept going because it seemed like the only choice. So I had gotten, to 32 years of age with a multi-million-dollar company, a beautiful husband, a beautiful son, and I was grossly unhappy. Yeah, really just woke up inside of what felt like a nightmare, but what looked perfect from the outside. And so I started coaching and I started helping women from the other side of burning my business to the ground, leaving my ex-husband, closing my business and traveling the world for almost 18 months. I made it work with a then 2-year-old and my ex-husband looking after him. And I had this realization that not everyone has the grace or the fortune of having a high 6-figure payout from a multi-million-dollar business to fund their healing and to fund their awakening and to really just spend the time to get to know themselves. And when I came back to Perth after traveling for such a long time, I dropped into my purpose, what's going to get me out of bed? Why am I rebuilding myself and rebuilding my businesses? And really, I touched on not wanting another woman to live a half life or accept half love. And I see so many women so often sacrificing, so many women compromising on their relationship because at least I've got a successful business, or compromising on their ambition because at least I've got a happy relationship. And it broke my heart. And it broke my heart in those moments when I realized that I was living inside of someone else's dream and someone else's reality, and that I for so long was foregoing what it was that I actually wanted because A, I didn't really know what I wanted, and B, I felt selfish. I felt like I wasn't allowed to want more from my life. Happiness wasn't an option for me because I should be grateful for the business that I had and the life that I had. And, coming from big T trauma in my childhood, having this shadow constantly over me of, well, at least I'm not a drug addict like my mum, and at least I'm not a dropkick like dropkicks like my family, or at least I'm not, insert reasons why I should be grateful for the half life I was living. I constantly found myself sacrificing and calling it compromise. And, after traveling the world for 18 months, doing a whole bunch of plant medicine, studying a bunch of different modalities, training in some of the best institutions under some of the best coaches and mentors, I found myself in this place where I was still craving someone that understood business, but could see the woman underneath the success. And so, like most great stories, that is who I became. Unmasked Founders was then born from the desire to be that voice of reason, to be that guiding light on maybe the darker days that we can find in business. And if I think back to the woman that I was, I was overweight, I was unemotional, I was not a great leader, I was a bitch actually. And I only lived for success. I only lived for my reputation and the business that I was building. And yeah, it was a very lonely place. And I remember constantly not really knowing what happiness was. You know, winning an award or being recognized for my business growth and feeling like this micro moment of pride, but then not really ever actually allowing myself to recognize myself, to feel happy for myself, to actually have any sort of joy in my life. But it seemed really strange to me that I wouldn't be happy because on paper I had everything. You know, building businesses came really easy to me. It was very much it was actually a trauma response, and I go into that in one of the episodes, but I needed to be validated through my success. I needed to prove that I was worthy of love and recognition through the business that I had built. And that's why for so long I carried the business on my back. It felt like such a weight by the end because I needed to be the hero. I needed clients to see me and value me. I had this narrative that I couldn't trust any of my team members. It really became a prison of my own making. And so in my fourth 7-figure business build now, and I was chatting to Steph Gorton, and we were talking about women in business that make it big or make big money. And she said, you know that we're an anomaly. And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, yeah, Les, there's not many women in business that actually ever make it to 7 figures. And this sort of started me researching as to why. Why do women in business not make it through? We're smart, we're capable, we're resilient, we're resourceful, but oftentimes it can be lonely. And we can want to give up because we're not only carrying the businesses, we're carrying the children and the relationship and sometimes our family. So I set out on this second mission to help guide 1,000 women in business to become millionaires through their business. And when I really sat with how I was going to do that, and how I could impact 1,000 lives in a short period of time, I thought, what did I need in those moments where I wanted to give up? What did I need in those moments where life felt like too much? What did I need in those moments where I really didn't want to get out of bed and do the sales call or speak to my team? And in those moments, I wanted to borrow belief from someone. I wanted to stop carrying the weight of my business. I wanted to stop carrying the weight of everything that felt like it was crashing down on me. And I really wanted to have someone show me that it was possible, and not by looking at the highlight reels, not by telling me how much money they had made, but by actually speaking to me about the moments they wanted to give up, what helped them through, and what was waiting for them on the other side of those moments. And this is what Unmasked Founders is about. It's about the raw, real conversations that I wish I had access to in the moments where my business and my life just felt like too much. And I really needed someone to remind me, firstly, who the fuck I am and what I was capable of, through their stories, through their failures to triumphs, through their invitation to believe that it's possible to feel like you're failing, but just keep going. This is also for the women that are inside of businesses that look successful on paper, but they're silently suffocating inside of them. Because that is who I was. I was externally validated, externally successful, Range Rovers, designer handbags, multi-million-dollar salaries, multi-million-dollar businesses, 5 properties, everything externally that I could have wanted to validate that I was worthy. And I was drowning. I was drowning in my relationship because I didn't feel seen and heard. We had a sexless marriage. I was drowning inside of my friendships because our conversations were really shallow and I didn't feel seen. I was drowning behind my own masks because I carried this mask of success, and I was part of the reason there was no depth in any of my relationships, but I just didn't know how to meet myself there. I didn't know how to meet others there. And it became really isolating. None of my friends understood because they didn't have businesses. My partner didn't even understand. It was really hard to find peers, and when I did, I didn't really trust anyone. So I want to be that voice for those women. I want to be the voice that you listen to when you're driving home from work exhausted, wondering about what you're going to make for dinner. I want to be that voice that reminds you that you don't have to sacrifice your needs for your wants, or your wants for your needs for that matter. I want to be the voice that reminds you that compromise 9 times out of 10 is actually sacrifice dressed up in a more acceptable word. And I want to be that voice that gives women hope that you can choose different, that you can have a fulfilling life and a successful business. If I could go back in time with the awareness that I have now, I wouldn't have burnt down my business, and I probably wouldn't have left my marriage in the way that I did. Now, I don't believe me and my ex-husband were actually ever meant to be together, because we got together so young and we changed so much that we're actually 2 very different people with 2 very different ideals about the world, and our values actually differ greatly. And so when I realized that and we started to become friends again, I was like, wow, we can co-parent great, but we were never actually meant to be in a relationship. I wouldn't have closed my business. I would have pivoted. I would have employed better people. I would have offshored 90% of my staff members so my wage bill wasn't eating into my profit so heavily. I would have taken Fridays off and done the work to heal in a softer and more gentle way, rather than blowing my whole life up and taking a whole year off and really then spending the next 12 months previous putting it all back together again. So often I hear women that want more for their lives but are afraid to ask for it or don't know how to get there. And this is what Unmasked Founders is about. It's about giving women that insight, that hope, that vision, that guiding light to bring them back to what's possible, to let them know that they don't have to sacrifice for love, they don't have to sacrifice for money, and they don't have to accept more than they want in life just because it feels greedy or selfish or impossible in this moment. This is the beacon, the reminder that we get to have it all, and that you don't have to be alone in the pursuit of having everything you want. So if this resonates, I would love for you to hit the subscribe button. We will be having some amazing guests on this podcast, having some really deep, profound conversations with 6- and 7-figure founders, mostly women, but some select men that are really going to share insights into what it really takes and how you can get there without sacrifice. See you inside.